General Hospital will reveal the explosion at Sonny's penthouse sent shockwaves through Port Charles, leaving everyone scrambling for answers. Initially, the attack seemed like the work of one of Sonny's many enemies, perhaps a rival from the criminal underworld, someone looking to exploit a moment of weakness. But as the investigation unfolded, the truth became far more shocking than anyone could have anticipated. Clues began to emerge, each one pointing toward an unlikely suspect, someone no one had even considered: Drew. At first, the very idea that Drew could be responsible for such a heinous act seemed inconceivable. He had always been a man of principle, someone who valued loyalty and family above all else. But behind the facade of the man everyone thought they knew, there was a darker reality lurking beneath the surface. Unbeknownst to those around him, Drew had forged a secret alliance with Sidwell, a powerful figure whose name had long been whispered in the shadows. Their partnership was built on mutual interests, but Sidwell had his own agenda, and Drew found himself dragged deeper into a world he had once sworn to leave behind. The plan was supposed to be simple, an intimidation tactic, a calculated move to remind Sonny that his empire was not untouchable. But something went terribly wrong. The explosion was far more devastating than intended, and Michael, Sonny's own son, ended up gravely injured in the blast. What had started as a ploy to destabilize Sonny quickly turned into an unforgivable act of betrayal. As the days passed, Sonny's anger festered into something far more dangerous than mere suspicion. He had spent a lifetime surviving attacks, betrayals, and calculated moves against him, but this one cut deeper than most. Someone had dared to bring the fight into his own home, and worse, they had hurt his son. Whoever was responsible would not escape his wrath. The more Sonny dug, the more the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. He retraced every step, every phone call, every shadow that had moved suspiciously in the background. Then, the moment of revelation arrived, a damning piece of evidence surfaced, one that tied Drew directly to the bombing. It was undeniable. Sonny's longtime ally had been the mastermind behind it all. The revelation sent shockwaves through Sonny's inner circle. Carly, stunned and furious, refused to believe that Drew could be capable of such treachery. Even Michael, despite his injuries, struggled to process the truth. But Sonny knew better. He had trusted Drew, given him a place in his family, only to be repaid with betrayal. There was no coming back from this. Drew, now cornered, found himself with no allies left. The walls were closing in on him, and Sonny was not a man known for mercy. There would be no courtroom, no plea deal, no second chances. In Sonny's world, betrayal had only one consequence. He didn't waste time with theatrics, his message would be swift and clear. Michael, torn between his loyalty to his father and the lingering bond he once had with Drew, begged Sonny to reconsider, but there was no room for negotiation. Sonny had built his empire on the understanding that loyalty was everything, and those who broke that trust would face consequences no matter who they were. The night of reckoning arrived. Drew, realizing that he had made a fatal mistake, tried to run, but there was nowhere left to hide. Sonny's men closed in on him, leaving him with a stark choice, either face Sonny directly or disappear forever. But Sonny was already waiting. His fury was ice-cold, his words sharp as a blade. There were no dramatic speeches, no explanations needed. Drew had made his choice, and now Sonny would make his. The final confrontation was swift, brutal, and absolute. Sonny ensured that Drew understood the magnitude of his betrayal before delivering the ultimate punishment. By the time the sun rose over Port Charles, the message was clear. No one crosses sunny Corinthos and walks away unscathed. With Drew gone, the dust settled, but the scars remained. Michael, forever changed by the betrayal of someone he once trusted, learned a harsh lesson about loyalty and deception. Carly, devastated by the truth, struggled to reconcile her past with the man she thought she knew. And Sonny, the man who had once welcomed Drew into his life, emerged from the ordeal more dangerous than ever, his rule over Port Charles reaffirmed with blood and vengeance. The penthouse would be rebuilt. The damage would be repaired. But the betrayal would never be forgotten. Jack Brennan's carefully constructed web of lies was bound to unravel sooner or later, and when it did, the fallout would be catastrophic. For weeks, he had managed to keep Jocelyn in the dark, manipulating situations to maintain his advantage. But secrets had a way of surfacing in Port Charles, and Brennan's deception was no exception. As Jocelyn continued her WSB training, she began noticing inconsistencies in Brennan's words and actions. Small details that once seemed insignificant now painted a much darker picture. At first, she dismissed them, unwilling to believe that the man who had earned her trust could be hiding something so sinister. But when the evidence became undeniable, Jocelyn found herself confronting a truth she never saw coming. At the same time, Carly was undergoing a period of reflection. The intense nature of her relationship with Brennan had left her questioning whether she had been too quick to dismiss him, and she considered rekindling their romance. However, just as she was ready to give him another chance, the truth about his deception shattered any hope of reconciliation. Carly, always fiercely protective of her daughter, was livid when she discovered Brennan's connection to Jocelyn's training and, more importantly, what he had been keeping from both of them. The revelation hit Jocelyn like a freight train. Brennan, the man she had trusted, had been playing a role all along. His involvement in her WSB training had not been a mere coincidence, it had been calculated, intentional, and deeply tied to Cyrus Renault's growing influence. Jocelyn had worked hard to prove herself in the program, determined to carve out her own path, but now it seemed like her success had been tainted by manipulation. The realization left her reeling. Had her training been a test of her abilities, or had she simply been a pawn in a much larger game? As Carly connected the dots, her anger turned to fury. She had spent years shielding Jocelyn from the dangers of Port Charles, only to realize that she had unknowingly allowed a threat to get dangerously close. She stormed into Brennan's office, demanding answers, her voice laced with the raw emotion of a mother betrayed. Brennan, caught off guard, tried to explain, but the damage had already been done. His justifications fell on deaf ears. Carly was not interested in excuses, she was interested in the truth. And the truth was damning. Jocelyn, for her part, was left feeling both heartbroken and enraged. The trust she had placed in Brennan was shattered beyond repair. She had fought so hard to establish herself as independent, only to realize that someone had been pulling the strings behind the scenes. Worse yet, the implications of Brennan's deceit extended far beyond her personal betrayal. If he had been working with Cyrus, then her training, her progress, and even her safety had been compromised. That was something she could not forgive. The fallout was immediate. Brennan, once a potential ally, became an enemy overnight. Carly severed all ties with him, making it clear that whatever connection they once had was over. Jocelyn, refusing to be a victim in the situation, turned her anger into determination. She would not let Brennan or Cyrus control her future. If anything, this betrayal only fueled her desire to prove herself even more. On her own terms. As the dust settled, one thing became clear: Brennan had made a grave mistake in underestimating the women of the Corinthos family. Jocelyn was no longer the naive young woman he had manipulated, and Carly was more dangerous than ever when protecting her own. Whatever game Brennan had been playing, he had just lost, badly. And now, both Carly and Jocelyn were ready to make sure he paid the price. The secret surrounding the true paternity of Sasha's unborn child was always bound to explode, and when it did, the fallout would send shockwaves through Port Charles. For now, Jason had stepped into the role of protector, pretending to be the father to shield both Sasha and the baby from the scrutiny and dangers that came with the truth. But secrets never stayed buried for long in this town, and with each passing day, the weight of the deception grew heavier. At first, it was easy to maintain the lie. Jason's presence provided a sense of security for Sasha, allowing her to navigate her pregnancy without fear. But as the months progressed, subtle cracks in the story began to emerge. Michael, despite his efforts to keep his distance, found himself drawn to Sasha in ways that went beyond mere concern for an old friend. His protectiveness, his quiet moments of hesitation, each one served as an unspoken testament to the truth he was hiding. Willow, sharp and intuitive as ever, was the first to notice the inconsistencies. She had accepted Jason's claim at face value, but small details began to gnaw at her. The way Michael reacted whenever Sasha's name was mentioned, the almost imperceptible tension in his voice whenever the baby was brought up, it didn't add up. And then there were the hushed conversations, the glances exchanged when they thought no one was looking. At first, she pushed the suspicions aside, unwilling to entertain the possibility. But then, fate intervened. Perhaps it was an overheard conversation, a misplaced document, or even an offhand remark that sparked the fire. Whatever the catalyst, once Willow's suspicions were piqued, there was no turning back. She began to dig, asking questions that no one wanted to answer, and the closer she got to the truth, the more desperate the lies became. Sasha, already weighed down by the emotional toll of keeping Michael's secret, struggled to maintain her composure. She had promised to keep Michael's identity hidden, but the strain was becoming unbearable. Then, just as the tension reached its peak, the unthinkable happened. Sasha went into premature labor. Whether it was the stress of the situation or an unrelated complication, the timing was undeniable. As she was rushed to the hospital, the truth unraveled in real time. Willow, relentless in her pursuit of answers, finally confronted Michael, demanding to know what he was hiding. The look in his eyes, the hesitation, the guilt, it was all she needed to confirm what she had suspected all along. Michael Corinthos was the father of Sasha's child. The revelation was a bombshell, sending ripple effects through their already fragile relationships. Willow, feeling betrayed and blindsided, struggled to comprehend how the man she loved had kept something so monumental from her. Jason, who had stepped in to protect Sasha, found himself caught in the crossfire as accusations flew. And Sasha, now in labor, had no choice but to face the consequences of her decision to keep the truth hidden. As the hospital room filled with tension and uncertainty, one thing became clear: there was no going back. The deception had reached its breaking point, and now, everyone involved had to face the fallout. Michael, torn between his love for Willow and his newfound responsibilities as a father, was left scrambling to repair the damage. Sasha, overwhelmed with emotion, had to decide whether she could navigate the storm that was about to follow. And Willow, devastated by the betrayal, was left questioning everything she thought she knew about the man she loved. In the end, the truth had come out, but at what cost? The relationships between Michael, Sasha, and Willow would never be the same, and the child at the center of it all was now part of a tangled web of love, lies, and consequences. And with Jason's involvement raising even more questions, the drama was far from over. The revelation of Nina and Drew's past indiscretion was bound to send shockwaves through Willow's world, upending everything she thought she knew about the people closest to her. For months, she had been navigating a fragile relationship with Nina, struggling to reconcile their complicated history. Though she had made efforts to keep the peace, there was always an underlying tension, a sense that Nina still had secrets lurking beneath the surface. But nothing could have prepared Willow for this particular betrayal. The truth unraveled in the most unexpected way. Perhaps it was an offhand remark overheard at the wrong moment, a slip of the tongue from someone who had assumed Willow already knew. Or maybe it was a damning piece of evidence, an old text message, a misplaced letter, or a confrontation between Nina and Drew that Willow happened to witness. However it happened, once the realization set in, there was no turning back. At first, Willow was in denial. It didn't make sense. Drew had been a pillar of support during some of the darkest moments of her life. He was supposed to be the person she could trust, not someone entangled in Nina's manipulative games. But the more she pieced things together, the more undeniable the truth became. Nina and Drew had once shared more than just an alliance, they had shared a secret affair, hidden away from the world. And they had both chosen to keep it from her. The weight of the betrayal hit her like a tidal wave, leaving her breathless and reeling. Had they truly believed she wouldn't find out? Had they thought their past didn't matter, that it wouldn't change everything? The idea of Nina, the woman she had tried so hard to accept, being involved with Drew was bad enough. But the deception, the deliberate choice to keep her in the dark, was what cut the deepest. Nina, of course, tried to do damage control, but her explanations only made things worse. Every justification, every attempt to shift the blame only solidified Willow's anger. How could she possibly trust Nina now, after this? And as for Drew, his betrayal stung just as deeply. He had stood by her, offered her guidance and support, all while hiding something so significant. If he had kept this from her, what else had he been lying about? As the fury and heartbreak mounted, Willow was faced with an impossible decision. Could she truly forgive them? And if not, what would that mean for her future relationships? Her world had already been shaken so many times, by illness, by family betrayals, by unexpected truths. This revelation felt like the final straw. But the consequences of this revelation didn't stop with Willow's personal heartbreak. If Drew had nothing left to lose, what was stopping him from turning the tables on Nina? She had been so focused on manipulating him, so determined to use their history to her advantage, that she had failed to consider the fallout if the truth got out. And now, with Willow's trust shattered, Drew had no reason to hold back. If he wanted to destroy Nina's fragile relationship with Willow for good, all he had to do was expose her role in every deception, her machinations against Carly, her behind-the-scenes manipulations, and every underhanded move she had made to stay in Willow's life. The question now wasn't just whether Willow could forgive them, but whether this revelation would set off a chain reaction that neither Nina nor Drew could control. The once carefully concealed affair was now a ticking time bomb, and the explosion was just beginning.